Deep in southern Florida, where the land dissolves into water and the water seems to breathe. Narrow backwater paths. Mangrove tunnels that twist like veins. Swamps so still they feel frozen in time. The Everglades is alive. But not in the way people expect. Here, the air hums even when nothing moves. The water reflects shapes that are not in the sky. And footsteps echo where no solid ground exists. Hunters whisper of voices drifting across the marsh at night. Airboat operators tell stories of lights floating between cypress trees. And hikers speak of trails that seem to rearrange themselves, leading deeper into darkness instead of back to safety. Some people enter the Everglades and come back changed. Some never come back at all. Tonight, we follow the backwater trails of the Everglades. Into places where the swamp watches every step. And where the darkness knows your name. Hello, my dear friend. I am truly glad you are here with me tonight. Because what we are about to explore exists far beyond the glow of cities and highways, deep within one of the most mysterious landscapes in America. But it is also a maze. A place where land and water blur together. Where sound carries for miles. And where survival depends on knowing when to stop moving. For centuries, people have vanished here. Explorers. Hunters. Tourists who underestimated the swamp. Many left behind stories. Stories of shadows standing knee-deep in water. Of voices calling from sawgrass fields. Of trails that loop endlessly until exhaustion sets in. Some believe spirits linger where people drowned or disappeared. Others say the Everglades itself is conscious, reshaping paths to trap those who wander too far. Before we continue, let me ask you something. If you were walking a backwater trail deep in the Everglades, and you realized the sounds of insects and birds had suddenly stopped, would you keep moving forward? Or would you freeze where you stand and wait? Now, slow your breathing. And follow me carefully into the most haunted Everglades backwater trails in Florida. Black cypress run winds slowly through a stretch of wetland forest where the land has remained largely unchanged for centuries. The trail follows shallow water channels and raised earth, weaving between massive cypress trees whose roots rise like knuckles from dark, still pools. During the day, the path feels ancient but peaceful, shaped by time rather than design. The cypress trees here are among the oldest in the region. Their trunks are wide and deeply ridged, their bark darkened by moisture and age. Branches twist high overhead, forming a canopy that blocks much of the sky. Light filters through in broken patterns, reflecting off water pooled along the trail. The air smells of wet wood and earth, thick but not unpleasant. Hikers often describe the trail as quiet. Sound behaves strangely in the cypress run. Footsteps are muted by mud and shallow water. Voices do not travel far. Even wind seems to lose strength beneath the canopy. The forest absorbs noise, creating an atmosphere that feels contained and watchful. As evening approaches, the trail begins to change. Shadows stretch unnaturally long across the water. The cypress trunks darken further, losing detail and definition. What once looked like trees begin to resemble towering figures standing silently on either side of the path. Their shapes appear upright and deliberate, as if positioned rather than grown. Roots emerging from the water resemble folded limbs. Moss hangs like draped fabric. When lantern light passes across them, the shadows shift in ways that suggest slow movement, even when nothing has changed. At night, the effect is unmistakable. Hikers moving through black cypress run after dark report an immediate sense of unease. The trail feels narrower. The water feels deeper. Orientation becomes difficult, as if distance stretches differently in low light. The figures formed by the trees seem closer together, crowding the path without ever blocking it. Then come the footsteps. Hikers hear splashing footsteps behind them. The sound is clear and rhythmic, matching the pace of walking. Water shifts and splashes in shallow pools just off the trail. The footsteps are close enough to feel present, but never close enough to feel touched. Most hikers assume another person is behind them. They step aside to let the unseen traveler pass. When no one appears, confusion sets in. The splashing continues, steady and measured, maintaining distance without explanation. When they stop, the sound continues. This detail appears in nearly every account. The hiker halts completely. Their breathing stills. The forest goes quiet. Yet the splashing footsteps persist. Moving forward at the same pace, passing behind and continuing ahead along the trail. Turning around reveals nothing. Lantern light cuts across water and tree roots, showing only empty path. The sound does not retreat or fade. It moves forward, as if something invisible is walking past and continuing on. Those who attempt to follow the sound find it impossible to catch. The footsteps always remain just ahead, splashing softly through pools that appear undisturbed when reached. No ripples linger. No water drips from branches or roots to explain the movement. The sound never leaves the trail. It does not veer into deeper water. It does not climb onto dry ground. It follows the same narrow path as the hiker, step for step, without deviation. Some hikers report the sensation of being guided. They feel compelled to keep walking, as stopping only heightens discomfort. Movement feels safer than stillness. The footsteps ahead seem to mark a route, drawing the hiker forward through darkness. Others feel pursued. For them, the sound feels like pressure rather than guidance. Each step forward brings no relief, as the distance never changes. The forest feels closer, the towering trunks leaning inward as if listening. The footsteps do not grow louder or faster. They remain consistent, patient, unhurried. This calm persistence unsettles hikers more than aggression would. The sound carries no urgency, no emotion, only presence. Local guides warn against night travel here. They do not embellish their advice. They simply say the trail behaves differently after dark. Many refuse to enter Black Cypress Run once the sun sets, even with groups. Historical records offer little explanation. The area has long been avoided at night by those who work nearby. Old maps show alternate routes skirting the cypress stands. Oral accounts describe the trail as active, a place that responds to movement. They suggest the water remembers footsteps and replays them when conditions allow. According to this idea, the sound does not belong to a single presence, but to the trail itself, repeating motion without form. Others believe the towering figures formed by the trees are not illusions. They say the forest organizes itself at night, reshaping shadows and sound to create the impression of watchers and walkers. In this telling, the footsteps are part of the forest's awareness, not meant to harm, but to accompany. Scientific explanations struggle here. Acoustics can explain some sound distortion, but not the consistency or directionality of the footsteps. Wildlife cannot account for the pacing or the way the sound continues independently of the hikera's movement. No physical evidence has ever been found. No footprints appear in the mud beyond those of the hikers themselves. No disturbances mark the water. Cameras placed along the trail capture only darkness, trees, and still pools. Hikers who experience the phenomenon often leave quickly. Some run, though the sound continues briefly before stopping suddenly without warning. Others walk steadily until reaching open ground, where the splashing ceases the moment the cypress trees thin. The transition is immediate. One step beyond the run, and the forest returns to normal sound. Insects resume their chorus. The sense of being followed disappears. The towering figures collapse back into trees. Those who leave carry the memory vividly. They describe heightened awareness of footsteps afterward, especially in wet environments. Some avoid forest trails entirely at night. Others return during the day, searching for signs that explain what they heard. By daylight, Black Cypress Run feels ordinary again. The trees stand silent and still. The water reflects sky and leaves. The trail appears narrow but manageable. No figures rise from the trunks. No footsteps follow. Yet the knowledge remains. That when darkness falls, the forest reshapes itself. That the cypress trees continue to stand, rooted deep in water and time. They have watched countless travelers pass through their shadows. They have heard footsteps come and go. And when the light fades, they seem to remember how movement sounds, replaying it softly behind those who walk alone. Black Cypress Run does not block passage. It does not reveal itself fully. It simply follows. And in the darkness, when the trunks become towering figures and the water reflects nothing but shadow, the sound of splashing footsteps reminds every hiker that the trail is aware of their presence. Whether they stop or keep moving forward. Whispergrass path cuts through a wide stretch of lowland, where the ground stays damp and the air hangs heavy. The trail is narrow, barely wide enough for one person to pass comfortably. Bordered on both sides by tall sawgrass that rises well above head height. The blades are sharp-edged and dense, forming walls of green that sway and rustle with even the slightest breeze. During the day, the path feels remote but manageable. Insects move in steady waves. The sawgrass whispers constantly as it shifts against itself, creating a sound that blends easily into the background. The hikers pass through without much thought, careful to stay centered on the trail to avoid the cutting edges. As evening approaches, the character of the path changes. Light fades unevenly beneath the tall grass. Shadows stretch across the dirt, blurring the edges of the trail. The air grows cooler and stiller, and the constant daytime noise begins to thin. Insects quiet. Wind slows. The whisper of grass becomes more pronounced, standing out in the growing silence. It is after sunset that the voices begin. At first, they are difficult to distinguish from the natural sound of the sawgrass. A subtle shift in tone. A softness that feels almost imagined. People pause, listening closely, telling themselves it is only the grass brushing together in a new way. Then a name is spoken. Clear. Precise. Familiar. The sound comes from within the grass itself, close enough to feel intimate, as if someone is standing just beyond reach. The voice is calm, unhurried, and unmistakably directed. Those who hear it often stop walking immediately. The instinct to turn around is immediate and powerful. Hearing Oni's name spoken in a quiet place creates a reflex that overrides logic. People spin toward the sound, heart racing, expecting to see another hiker or a friend playing a trick. The sawgrass stands exactly as it was, blades overlapping and swaying gently. No movement betrays a presence. No gap opens in the wall of green. The trail behind remains empty. When walking resumes, the whispering follows. It does not shout. It does not repeat the name insistently. Instead, it drifts alongside the path, keeping pace just beyond the grass line. The sound feels guided, as though it knows exactly where the listener is at all times. Some report hearing additional words, too soft to fully grasp. Others hear only their name, spoken again after several minutes of silence. The timing feels intentional, spaced to keep attention fixed on the sound. Turning around never reveals anything. The experience creates a growing tension. Muscles tighten. Breathing becomes shallow. Every step forward feels heavier than the last. The path seems longer than expected. Stretching ahead without clear landmarks. Those who stop walking entirely notice the whisper's pause. The sawgrass continues its natural rustle, but the voices recede, waiting. Standing still brings no comfort. The feeling of being observed intensifies, not from a visible direction, but from within the walls of grass themselves. Moving forward causes the whispering to resume. Some hikers attempt to leave the trail, stepping into the sawgrass to search for the source of the sound. This proves difficult. The grass resists entry, its blades dense and unyielding. Visibility drops instantly within the thicket, and the path disappears behind them. Those who try this report a sudden surge of unease, stronger than before. The whispers fall silent, replaced by the overwhelming sound of grass brushing close to the body. Most retreat quickly back to the trail, shaken and disoriented. Once back on the path, the voice returns. It speaks the name again, closer this time, as if pleased by the attention. The tone remains gentle, never aggressive. There is no demand, no command, only recognition. Historical accounts of the area mention the trail as a boundary route used by early settlers and traders. Journals describe difficulty navigating the sawgrass at night, noting strange echoes and the feeling of being followed. Some entries mention hearing familiar voices where no people were present, attributed at the time to exhaustion and isolation. Modern visitors share similar stories without knowing the history. Search teams have investigated reports of distress along Whispergrass Path. They find no physical cause. No hidden speakers. No unusual wildlife behavior that could explain the clarity of the voices. Audio recordings capture only the natural sound of grass and wind. Those who walk the path in groups often have different experiences. One person hears their name clearly. Others hear nothing at all. Sometimes two people hear different names at the same moment, each convinced the sound was meant for them alone. Attempts to compare experiences later reveal striking similarities in tone and timing. The whispering always stops at the end of the trail. The moment the path opens into clear ground, the voices fall silent. The air feels lighter, as if pressure has lifted. Looking back, the trail appears ordinary. The tall grass sways gently. No sign of movement marks where the voice came from. In daylight, the experience feels distant and difficult to explain. At night, it lingers vividly in memory. Locals advise simple rules. Do not respond to the voices. Do not leave the path. Keep moving forward until the trail ends. They say the grass listens, but it does not follow beyond its borders. Whispergrass Path remains open and unmarked. During the day, it is just another narrow trail through dense growth. At night, it becomes something else. A corridor of sound and attention, where voices know who is passing and choose to acknowledge them. Those who hear their names spoken clearly from within the blades often carry the experience with them long afterward. In quiet moments, they recall the softness of the voice and the certainty with which it spoke. And when tall grass rustles nearby, even far from the path, they sometimes pause, listening, just to be sure their name is not being whispered again from a place where turning around reveals nothing at all. Deadwater Bend lies along a slow curve of river where the banks widen and the channel deepens without warning. From above, it looks calm and ordinary, a smooth stretch of water bordered by reeds and low trees. There are no rapids here, no visible hazards, nothing that suggests the unease people feel the moment they draw close. The water does not ripple. Wind passes over it without effect. Rain falls and disappears without rings. Even when animals move through the shallows, the surface remains unnaturally smooth, closing behind them as if nothing disturbed it at all. Boats glide across the bend leaving wakes that fade far too quickly, the water settling back into stillness within seconds. Locals say the river goes quiet here. Not just calm, but restrained. Fish avoid the center of the bend. Birds skim the edges and lift away quickly. Insects hover, then drift elsewhere. The water reflects the sky perfectly, holding clouds and light in place as though painted rather than mirrored. Boaters passing through Deadwater Bend often lower their speed without realizing it. The air feels thicker. Sound carries oddly, sometimes echoing when it should not, sometimes vanishing entirely. Conversation drops to whispers, not from fear, but from instinct. It is the reflections that unsettle people most. At first, they appear ordinary. Trees, sky, the outline of a boat drifting along the bend. Then something else appears. A shape that does not belong to the scene above. A face looking up from the surface where no one floats. These reflections do not distort like ordinary water images. They hold their shape, clear and steady, as if the surface were glass. Yet when boaters look up or turn around, there is nothing there. The shoreline remains empty. The boat is alone. Looking back down reveals the reflection still present, watching from below. Those who stare too long describe a disorienting sensation. The reflected figures do not move independently, but they do not match movement either. They remain fixed, as if anchored beneath the surface, waiting for attention rather than reacting to it. Touching the water breaks the image instantly. The reflection vanishes the moment skin meets the surface. Yet the water still does not ripple. Some boaters choose to leave quickly after this. Others remain, drawn by curiosity or disbelief, wanting to understand what they are seeing. Those who enter the water experience the most disturbing reports. Waiting near the edge feels normal at first. The water is cool, clear, and shallow. The riverbed slopes gently downward, offering no immediate danger. But after a few steps, many report a sensation near their legs. A light brushing, like fingers passing briefly against skin. The contact is subtle. It does not pull or grab. It lingers just long enough to be unmistakable, then disappears. People react instinctively, stepping back or lifting their feet, expecting to see weeds or debris. There is nothing there. The water remains clear. The bottom undisturbed. Those who continue waiting sometimes feel the sensation again, this time higher, brushing calves or knees. Panic often follows. Even strong swimmers retreat quickly, hearts racing, unable to explain what they felt. No marks are ever found. No scratches. No bruises. Only the memory of contact where nothing should have been. At night, Deadwater Bend becomes more intense. Moonlight reflects perfectly off the surface, creating the illusion of open space below rather than water. Boaters anchored nearby report hearing faint sounds rising from the water. Not splashes or movement, but low tones that feel shaped, almost vocal. The sounds do not travel far. They hover close to the surface, then fade. Looking down during these moments sometimes reveals reflections that do not match the sky at all. Faces appear briefly, pale against the dark water, then vanish when light shifts or eyes blink. Historical records offer fragments without clarity. Long before modern boats used the river, Deadwater Bend served as a crossing point. Barges slowed here to navigate the curve. Accidents were common, though details are sparse. Logs mention lost cargo, delayed passages, and unexplained disappearances, often noted without comment. Local stories passed quietly between generations describe the bend as a place that keeps what enters it. Not violently, not suddenly, but patiently. The water does not rush or resist. It waits. Scientific explanations attempt to address the stillness. The bend sits in a natural basin. Currents cancel out. Sediment smooths movement. These explanations account for some behavior, but not all. They do not explain reflections that show what is not there. They do not explain touch without source. Caretakers of nearby docks warn visitors not to swim in the bend. They advise boaters to keep moving, to avoid anchoring overnight. The warnings are practical, delivered without superstition, but their seriousness suggests long familiarity. Those who ignore the advice often leave unsettled. Some report dreams after visiting Deadwater Bend. Dreams of standing waist-deep in unmoving water. Of seeing themselves reflected below, watching from a depth that feels endless. Waking brings relief, but also a lingering awareness of something unfinished. By daylight, the bend looks harmless again. The water shines. The banks appear solid and safe. Reflections behave normally until watched too closely. Many question their own experience afterward, searching for rational explanations that never quite fit. Others avoid the area entirely, unwilling to test the bend a second time. Deadwater Bend remains part of the river, neither marked nor closed. Boats still pass through. Wildlife still approaches the edges cautiously. The water continues to lie smooth and unbroken. It does not ripple. It reflects more than it should. And for those who step too close, who linger in its stillness, the bend sometimes reaches upward just enough to remind them that calm water can hold more than silence beneath its surface. Crooked Heron Way is not a road, but a slender footpath that winds through the whisper fun. It is a place of still waters, tall reeds, and profound silence. The path's namesake is its most prominent, and unsettling, feature. At regular intervals along its muddy banks, herons stand motionless. They are the great blue herons, statuesque birds common to wetlands. But here, their behavior defies all natural instinct. They do not move even when approached. Hikers report walking to within a few feet of these sentinel birds. There is no startled takeoff, no cautious retreat. The herons ignore flies that land on their feathers. They do not react to loud noises or sudden movements. This absolute stillness is so complete that some have wondered if they are taxidermy, placed there as some bizarre art installation. But they are undeniably alive. They are breathing, yet perfectly inert, as if cast in gray stone and feathers. The phenomenon becomes more pronounced at dusk. As the sun sinks and the fun is painted in long shadows, the heron's silhouettes undergo a change. At night, their shadows stretch unnaturally long. The fading light should cast a distorted shadow, but what stretches across the path or into the water is not a simple elongation of a bird's shape. These shadows are thinner, more attenuated, sometimes taking on a vaguely humanoid profile, a tall, thin figure with a long, slender head. These shadows do not waver like normal shadows. They lie perfectly still, dark stains on the landscape that seem to absorb the remaining light. Even when the heron itself is obscured by reeds, its elongated shadow often remains clearly visible on an open patch of ground. This has led to the quiet, persistent speculation among those who frequent the fun. Some say the birds are not birds at all. The theory is not that they are robots or sculptures, but something else wearing a Herona-esque shape. They are watchers, markers, or perhaps guides of a different sort. Their impossible stillness is a form of intense focus, not on fish in the water, but on the path itself and those who walk it. Their distorted shadows are considered by some to be a glimpse of their true form. A silhouette cast by a different kind of light. A wildlife photographer, Leo Mirren, spent a week attempting to document the herons. He set up blinds, used silent shutters, and observed them for hours. In his professional portfolio, the images are stunning studies in patience. In his private notes, he expressed deep unease. He wrote that their eyes, even through a long lens, seemed to track him with a precision no animal could manage without moving its head. His most disturbing entry concerns a time-lapse sequence taken overnight. But its shadow, captured by moonlight, slowly pivoted over the course of the night, turning to follow the path long after any natural light source had moved. Biologists have studied the area, suggesting the herons are in a state of profound torpor due to a unique mineral in the water, or that they are suffering from a parasite that affects motor function. The long shadows are blamed on the flat, reflective nature of the sun and the low angle of the sun, creating complex mirage effects. Yet, the folklore of the indigenous people who once traversed these wetlands tells of the path keepers. They were spirits tasked with maintaining the ancient, subtle trails that crisscrossed the world, lines of energy and memory. To human eyes, they often chose the forms of native animals to avoid causing alarm. The heron, a patient hunter that stands between water and sky, was a favored guise. Their stillness is their duty. They are holding a point, maintaining a node on an invisible web. Their long, strange shadows are the true shape of that responsibility. Visible only when the world is half in light, half in shadow. To see one is to know you are on a significant path. To see many is to know you are walking a line of great, silent importance. Walking Crooked Heron Way is therefore an act of passing through a gallery of guardians. The path is quiet, the mud sucks at your boots. And the only company is these motionless, watchful forms. You are not threatened. You are witnessed. The uncanny feeling arises from the realization that you are the moving part in a static landscape. A temporary disturbance in their eternal vigil. The path is not named for the birds that happen to be there. It is named for what stands there, has always stood there. Using the shape of a heron. To watch the world go by. Casting long, thoughtful shadows. That have nothing to do with the setting sun. And everything to do with the deep, slow memory of the land itself. Moon Sink Trail begins as an ordinary footpath winding through low woodland. Before descending into open marsh. By daylight, it appears manageable and quiet. A narrow ribbon of packed earth bordered by reeds and shallow water. Hikers pass through without concern. Noting only the soft ground and the way the land seems to breathe with moisture. As the trail dips lower, the air cools and thickens. Sounds grow muted. Footsteps feel heavier, as if the ground absorbs more than weight. The marsh stretches outward on both sides, flat and reflective, offering little sense of distance. Even during the day, the path feels longer than it should. It is under moonlight that Moon Sink Trail changes. When the moon rises high and clear, its light spreads across the marsh in an unfamiliar way. The water does not simply reflect the glow. It emits it. A faint, pale illumination rises from the surface, subtle but unmistakable, outlining pools and channels with soft radiance. The light is strongest away from the trail, fading near the packed earth as if avoiding it. Travelers often stop without realizing why. The trail itself feels less certain at night. Edges blur. The path narrows perceptibly, or seems to, encouraging careful steps and steady focus forward. And yet, the pull is sideways. Those who walk Moon Sink Trail by moonlight describe an urge to step off the path. Not a sudden impulse, but a persistent suggestion. The glowing water feels closer than it should be. A step to the side seems harmless, even logical, as if the trail is only a guideline rather than a rule. Some travelers give in to the urge. The moment a foot leaves the path and presses into the marsh, the sensation changes completely. The glow remains, but its warmth vanishes. The ground yields too easily. Water seeps upward around boots or shoes, cold and clinging. Those who step off report an immediate emotional shift. Calm collapses into dread. Not fear of slipping or sinking, but a deeper, more absolute sense that something is wrong. The marsh feels immense, no longer flat and open, but vast and enclosing. Breathing becomes difficult. Thoughts scatter. The glow, once gentle, feels intrusive, exposing rather than guiding. Sounds disappear entirely, replaced by a pressure that feels internal rather than external. Many freeze in place, unable to move forward or back. The idea of lifting a foot feels overwhelming, as if the marsh resists release. Some describe the sensation of being noticed, not by a presence, but by the landscape itself, as though the ground has become aware of the intrusion. Those who manage to return to the path do so with great effort. Each step back feels earned rather than natural. Once both feet are on solid ground again, the dread lifts almost instantly, leaving behind shaking limbs and racing hearts. The glow remains unchanged, continuing to shimmer across the marsh as if nothing occurred. People who never step off the path still feel the pull. It grows stronger the longer they linger. Standing still intensifies the sensation, making it harder to tell which direction is correct. Some report feeling the path tilt subtly, guiding balance toward the glowing water rather than straight ahead. Veteran hikers advise constant movement. Do not stop. Do not linger. Keep eyes forward and trust the trail even when it feels less real than the marsh beside it. Those who ignore this advice sometimes experience lingering effects. After leaving the trail, they report unease that follows them for hours or days. Dreams of glowing water recur. Thoughts drift back to the marsh without clear reason. The memory carries weight, as if something unresolved remains. Historical notes suggest Moon Sink Trail follows an older route once used to cross the marsh before modern paths were established. Records mention travelers avoiding night crossings, waiting instead for dawn even when conditions were otherwise favorable. Local accounts passed quietly between families describe the marsh as active during certain lunar phases. They say the moon draws something upward from the water, something that does not want company, but does not repel it either. Scientific explanations focus on bioluminescent organisms, gas release, and optical illusion. These explain the glow, but not the emotional response. Not the consistent dread reported by those who step off the path. Environmental researchers studying the area note unusually high levels of methane beneath the marsh. The gas shifts slowly, creating pockets of unstable ground. They warn that stepping off established paths can be dangerous, though their concern focuses on physical risk rather than psychological impact. Yet even researchers admit the place feels different at night. Moon Sink Trail has no barriers or fences. It remains open and lightly marked, relying on awareness rather than enforcement. Signs warn of unstable footing, but they do not mention the pull, or the dread, or the glow that feels alive under moonlight. Those who walk the trail safely often describe a sense of relief when they reach higher ground. The air feels lighter. Sound returns gradually. The glow fades behind them, retreating into ordinary darkness as the marsh gives way to firmer soil. Looking back rarely brings clarity. From a distance, the marsh looks peaceful, even beautiful. The trail is barely visible, a thin line through shimmering water. It is difficult to believe anything there could inspire such unease. And yet, those who have felt it know better. Moon Sink Trail remains unchanged, dipping quietly into the marsh and rising again beyond it. By day, it offers a simple passage. By night, under moonlight, it becomes a test of attention and restraint. The water glows faintly, inviting without promise. The path narrows, asking to be trusted. And for those who feel drawn to step aside, the marsh offers a single, unforgettable lesson. Not every invitation is meant to be accepted. Mangrove vein passage cuts through a dense coastal wetland where land and water tangle together without clear boundaries. The passage is narrow and winding, shaped not by design but by erosion and tide. Sunlight filters down in thin, shifting strands, catching on wet bark and shallow pools. The air is heavy with moisture and salt. Insects move constantly, though their sound fades quickly beneath the canopy. Every step requires attention, careful placement between roots and mud. The mangroves grow close together here. Their branches arch inward, bending low over the path. Leaves brush shoulders and arms as people pass, leaving faint streaks of moisture behind. The passage twists sharply, forcing slow progress and frequent turns that limit visibility. As light begins to fade, the character of the passage changes. Shadows deepen rapidly. The water darkens until it reflects nothing. The mangroves lose individual detail, blending into a continuous wall of shapes and movement. Orientation becomes difficult, even for those familiar with the route. Branches scrape like fingers against skin. The sensation is light but persistent. Twigs drag across exposed arms. Leaves slide along necks and wrists. The contact feels deliberate rather than accidental, as if the passage tightens slightly with each step forward. The scraping follows movement. When walkers slow, the branches seem to press closer. When they speed up, the scraping quickens in response. Clothing catches briefly, then releases, never tearing, never holding long enough to trap. The sound of the branches is dry and soft. It resembles skin brushing skin more than wood against fabric. The noise stays close, right at the edge of hearing, blending with breath and heartbeat. That is when the breathing begins. People hear breathing close to their ears. It is faint at first, nearly indistinguishable from their own breath. A soft inhale. A controlled exhale. The sound does not echo or travel. It exists within inches, as if someone walks just behind or beside them. Those who stop walking notice something unsettling. The breathing does not stop immediately. It continues for 1 or 2 cycles, then fades slowly, as if adjusting to stillness. When movement resumes, the sound returns just as quietly as before. The sound matches their own pace. Each inhale aligns with their breathing. Each exhale follows the same rhythm. Faster steps bring quicker breaths. Slower movement stretches the sound into longer intervals. The synchronization is precise, impossible to ignore once noticed. Turning the head reveals nothing. Lantern light shows only tangled roots and narrow water channels. No figure stands nearby. No reflection moves in the water. The sound remains, close and intimate, without source. Those who hold their breath experience the strongest reaction. The surrounding air feels thick. Pressure builds in the chest. The silence becomes uncomfortable. After a few seconds, breathing resumes instinctively, and with it, the sound returns, perfectly matched once more. The passage feels narrower at night. Walls of mangrove roots lean inward. The path curves tighter. The sense of distance collapses, making each step feel longer and more deliberate. The breathing remains constant throughout, neither advancing nor falling behind. Some describe the feeling of being accompanied. Not followed, not chased, but joined. The presence implied by the breathing feels parallel rather than predatory. It does not crowd or touch. It simply keeps pace. Others feel deeply unsettled. For them, the closeness of the sound creates tension that builds with every step. The inability to locate the source turns each breath into a reminder of vulnerability within the confined space. The mangroves react subtly. Roots shift slightly beneath the water. Leaves rustle without wind. The passage seems to adjust as walkers move through it, opening and closing in small increments. Local guides avoid the passage after dark. They warn visitors to pass through before sunset or not at all. When asked why, they offer little detail, saying only that the mangroves behave differently when the light is gone. Historical records describe the passage as unreliable. Early navigators noted that the route seemed to change, narrowing or widening unpredictably. Some avoided it entirely, preferring longer paths through open water rather than risk confusion within the mangroves. Scientific explanations fall short. Acoustics can explain some sound reflection, but not the precision of the matched breathing. Environmental factors can account for scraping branches, but not the sense of responsive movement. No recordings have captured the sound clearly. Audio devices pick up water movement and ambient noise, but the breathing rarely appears on playback. When it does, it sounds faint and distorted, nothing like what walkers report hearing so close to their ears. Those who exit the passage describe immediate relief. The breathing stops the moment open space is reached. Branches pull back. The air feels lighter. Normal sound returns gradually, replacing the tight silence of the mangroves. Many pause afterward, catching their breath. Only then do they realize how controlled their breathing had become, how closely it had been matched by something unseen. Some report lingering effects. They notice heightened awareness of their own breath for hours afterward. By day, mangrove vein passage appears unchanged. Branches hang where they always have. Roots form the same narrow corridor. Water flows slowly beneath the surface. Yet those who have walked it after dark know the difference. They remember the scraping that felt too intentional. The breathing that felt too close. The way the passage seemed to move with them rather than around them. Mangrove vein passage does not trap or confuse deliberately. It does not block the way or lead travelers astray. It simply responds, matching movement with movement, breath with breath, creating an experience that feels deeply personal and impossible to ignore. The mangroves continue to grow and twist. Their roots bind land and water together. Their branches close overhead. And when darkness settles, and someone walks the narrow path, the passage listens closely, scraping softly, and breathing in time, reminding every traveler that they are not moving through an empty place. Drowned Lantern Trail winds through a low-lying wetland where land and water trade places with the seasons. The path was once a reliable route used by fishermen and traders moving between inland settlements and the coast. To guide travelers through fog and darkness, lanterns were mounted on posts along the trail, spaced carefully so one light could always be seen from the next. Over time, the water rose. Flooding became frequent. Marsh spread outward. The trail narrowed and sank in places, until maintaining the lanterns was no longer possible. Posts rotted. Lights were removed. The route was officially closed, marked as unsafe and unreliable. The lanterns should have disappeared with it. After dark, lights still appear along the trail. They do not burn brightly. Each one glows softly, hovering just above the waterline or resting where a post once stood. The color is warm and steady, unmistakably lantern light, visible even through mist and rain. Hikers see them from a distance first. A single glow ahead on the path, reassuring and familiar. Then another farther along, aligned in a way that suggests intention. The lights appear spaced correctly, just as they were when the trail was still maintained. Those who encounter them often feel relief. In wetlands, darkness can feel disorienting. The ground shifts underfoot. Reflections distort depth. Seeing a light ahead suggests safety and direction. Many assume the lanterns have been restored, or that another group is nearby. Following them feels natural. As hikers move forward, the lights retreat just enough to remain ahead, always visible, always guiding. The ground beneath becomes wetter. Shallow water spreads across the path, reflecting the glow in broken patterns. The lights do not stop. They lead deeper into the flooded areas, away from higher ground and toward sections of the wetland where water is darkest and stillest. The air grows cooler. Sound dampens. Insects quiet. Footsteps make less noise as water absorbs movement. Some hikers turn back. Those who do report difficulty retracing their steps. The path behind looks different, submerged and altered. The lights ahead remain visible, while the way back fades into darkness. Others continue forward, trusting the trail as it once was. They step carefully, using the lanterns as reference points. Water rises to ankles, then knees. The lights remain just far enough ahead to encourage one more step, one more careful movement. Search records show that several hikers have vanished in this area over the years. No signs of struggle are found. No belongings recovered beyond the trail entrance. Their last known positions place them near sections where old lantern posts once stood, now fully submerged. During official operations, the trail is dark. No lanterns appear, no matter the time of night or weather. Teams navigate using modern equipment and find only water, reeds, and broken remnants of the old path. Locals speak about the trail cautiously. They say the lights show themselves only to those who are already moving through the wetland after dark. They say the lanterns do not lie, but they do not lead where they once did. The water has changed the land, and the trail has not accepted that. Some believe the lights are reflections or atmospheric effects. Others point out that the alignment is too precise, too consistent. The lanterns appear exactly where memory says they should be, even though nothing physical remains. Those who have followed the lights and returned describe a strange sense of invitation. The glow feels patient. It does not flicker or fade. When hikers stop, the lights hold their position. When they move again, the lights continue forward. There is no sound accompanies them. There is no crackle of flame, no clink of metal. The lights exist without weight or heat. Reaching out toward one reveals nothing but cool air and mist. The most dangerous moments come when the water deepens suddenly. The trail drops without warning in places where erosion has carved channels beneath the surface. One step finds solid ground. The next finds nothing. Lantern light reflects off black water that gives no hint of depth. Turning away requires effort, as if resisting a strong current. When hikers manage to escape the flooded sections, the lights vanish. They do not fade gradually. They are simply gone. Darkness returns, along with the sound of insects and wind. The wetland resumes its ordinary rhythm, indifferent to what nearly happened. Those who vanish are never confirmed to have followed the lights. There is no proof. No recordings. Only patterns and absence. The trail takes them, and the water keeps what it takes. Authorities discourage night travel in the area and maintain barriers where possible. Signs warn of flooding and unstable ground. None mention lanterns. Yet reports continue. Travelers speak of seeing a single light far ahead, then another. They speak of familiarity and reassurance, of feeling guided by something that knew the way. They speak quietly, unsure whether they were in danger or simply lost. Drowned Lantern Trail remains officially closed, but it is still there, threading through water that slowly reshapes it. By day, it looks like any other flooded path, broken and unreliable. By night, it remembers what it used to be. The lights that appear after dark do not belong to the present landscape. One that no longer exists above water. Following them means stepping into that memory, trusting a route that the land itself has erased. Most who see the lights choose not to follow. They turn back, unsettled, carrying the image with them into safer ground. For those who do not return, the wetland offers no answers. Only still water, tall reeds, and the quiet understanding that some paths continue to guide long after they should have been left behind. Still Ice Slough lies beyond a bend of low marshland where the ground softens and the air grows cool and damp. It is not marked on most maps, only hinted at by a widening of reeds and a shallow basin of water that seems to gather without flowing anywhere in particular. From a distance, it looks like any other quiet wetland pool, unremarkable and still. Up close, it feels different. The water is perfectly calm. Not just undisturbed, but settled in a way that feels intentional. Breezes pass overhead without effect. Insects skim the surface and leave no trace. Even when something enters the water, the disturbance fades instantly, as if the slough is unwilling to remember motion. Visitors often pause at the edge without realizing why. Sound behaves strangely here. Footsteps feel distant. Voices seem swallowed by the air. The world narrows to the water and the reeds surrounding it. The first sign that something is wrong appears in the reflection. At a glance, the surface mirrors the sky and surrounding grass. But when the light is right, shapes appear beneath the reflection. Two pale ovals, evenly spaced, staring upward from below the surface. The eyes appear human in proportion, but lack detail. Most people react instinctively by blinking. When they do, the eyes vanish. The water returns to normal reflection. Sky and reeds replace the unsettling shapes. For a brief moment, relief follows. Perhaps it was a trick of light. Fatigue. Reflection layered oddly with shadow. Blink again, and the eyes return. They reappear exactly where they were before, unchanged and waiting. The timing feels precise, too precise to dismiss. Blink once, they are gone. Blink again, they are back. Those who test this quickly feel a rise in anxiety. The act of blinking becomes loaded with meaning. Each closure of the eyes feels like a choice, a brief surrender of control. Visitors report feeling watched even when they look away. Turning their backs does not bring comfort. The sensation follows, settling between the shoulders, heavy and persistent. The slough feels aware of attention, responding to it rather than generating it. Some attempt to step closer to the water for clarity. The surface remains smooth, reflecting their own faces now layered faintly over the watching eyes below. The overlap creates a disorienting effect, as if two viewpoints occupy the same space. Touching the water breaks the image. Ripples spread outward, erasing the eyes completely. Yet the calm returns within seconds, faster than expected. And when the surface stills, the eyes slowly reform, watching again as if uninterrupted. Those who linger often experience a heightened sense of vigilance. Every sound feels directed. Every movement feels observed. The feeling does not escalate into panic, but into sustained alertness that becomes exhausting over time. Leaving the slough does not immediately end the sensation. Several visitors report feeling watched for hours afterward. Reflections in windows and mirrors draw uncomfortable attention. Blinking feels deliberate, almost risky. Sleep that night is shallow, filled with dreams of open eyes that never close. Caretakers of nearby land avoid the slough entirely. They refer to it only indirectly, advising newcomers to keep moving and not linger near still water. When pressed for explanation, they offer none. Only a quiet seriousness that discourages further questions. Historical references are scarce. Early survey notes mention a stagnant basin avoided during mapping. Comments include phrases like unnatural calm and difficult to focus near. No cause is offered. Local stories passed quietly described the slough as a place that notices. Not a place that acts, but one that observes continuously, without rest. According to these accounts, the eyes are not separate entities, but expressions of the water itself. Modern attempts to document the phenomenon yield mixed results. Photographs sometimes capture vague shapes beneath the surface, but never clearly enough to confirm what the eye sees directly. Video footage shows ordinary reflections, with no sign of eyes appearing or disappearing. Those who witness the phenomenon insist it does not translate well to recordings. They say it requires presence, attention, and awareness. That the slough responds differently to observation than to documentation. Scientists point to pareidolia and reflection artifacts. The brain seeks patterns, especially faces. Calm water reflects light in complex ways. Blinking resets visual perception, altering interpretation. These explanations are reasonable, but they fail to account for the emotional consistency reported by visitors. The feeling of being watched does not vary much. It is steady, impartial, and constant. There is no threat, no escalation, no release. Just awareness pressing back against awareness. Those who stay longest often report a shift in perspective. After a time, the eyes feel less intrusive and more neutral. The watching becomes mutual. Some describe an odd calm settling in, a sense of being acknowledged rather than judged. Fatigue and unease eventually take over, urging departure. By daylight, still eye slough appears harmless. The water reflects clouds and blue sky. Reeds sway gently. There is no sign of eyes beneath the surface, no matter how long one looks. Blinking feels normal again. Yet those who have seen the eyes know how easily they return. A certain angle of light. A moment of stillness. A pause too long at the water's edge. It does not trap or chase. It simply watches, patiently, waiting for someone to notice the reflection that looks back. And once noticed, it is difficult to forget the feeling of being seen without expression, without intent, by eyes that vanish only when you stop looking, and return the moment you blink. In the remote highlands of the Western Ridge System, where valleys fold into one another like the pages of an old book, there winds a narrow passage known to few and documented by fewer still. It is called Bone Creek Trace, a name that evokes curiosity long before the path itself comes into view. The trail skirts the edge of a shallow, slow-moving waterway, its banks shaded by alder and cottonwood, their branches swaying gently in the mountain breeze. What sets this path apart is not its terrain, nor its remoteness, but what lies upon it. Scattered along the trail, embedded in the soil or resting atop mossy stones, are animal bones. Deer antlers curve like ancient calligraphy against the earth. Rib fragments gleam white under the afternoon sun. A fox skull, worn smooth by time and weather, rests near a cluster of river stones, its hollow eye sockets facing east. Some bones are bleached and brittle, cracked by seasons of frost and thaw. Others appear startlingly fresh, still bearing traces of sinew or fur, as if placed there only hours before. Most perplexing of all are those that seem deliberately arranged. Not in any known cultural pattern, nor in any way that suggests human ritual. But in formations that feel intentional nonetheless. These configurations are never disturbed by wind or rain. A ring of small vertebrae encircling a stone. A line of scapulae leading from the water's edge inward, stopping just short of the path. By day, the trail feels quiet, almost meditative. The creek murmurs over smooth stones. Birds dart between branches. And sunlight dapples the forest floor in gold and green. But as dusk arrives, the light softens, then fades entirely. And the creek, once a gentle companion, begins to tell a different story. After dark, a faint clicking echoes through the water. Not the sound of pebbles tumbling downstream, nor the snapping of twigs underfoot. This is rhythmic, deliberate, like small stones being tapped together underwater. The pattern varies, but the source remains unseen. Hydrophones lowered into the creek capture the sound clearly. Yet no aquatic life known to inhabit the region produces such a signal. The sound continues to echo through the water, a haunting, unexplained phenomenon. Hikers who camp nearby often report the noise beginning just after moonrise. It does not grow louder with proximity, nor diminish with distance. It simply exists, pervasive and unplaceable, as if the creek itself is speaking in a language just beyond comprehension. Then come the figures. Not always, and never close enough for certainty. But more than a dozen credible observers have described them. Shapes crouched low in the underbrush, just beyond the reach of headlamp beams or firelight. Humanoid in outline, yet hunched, with limbs that seem too long for their frames. They do not move toward the trail. They do not flee when startled. They remain still, heads tilted slightly, as if listening to the creek, to the wind, to the hikara's own breath. No photograph has ever captured one. Motion sensors trigger intermittently. But the resulting images show only empty foliage or blurred motion too indistinct to interpret. Thermal scans reveal fleeting anomalies, patches of cool air, where the figures are said to appear but nothing consistent enough to confirm a physical presence. Local indigenous communities speak of the place with quiet reverence. They do not call it Bone Creek Trace. Their name for it translates roughly to the place where the earth remembers its guests. Elders explain that animals who die in the surrounding highlands are sometimes drawn, in their final moments, toward this waterway. How or why remains a mystery, but the bones accumulate not through predation or accident, but through something closer to pilgrimage. Some researchers speculate that mineral deposits in the creek bed may have subtle magnetic or acoustic properties, influencing both animal behavior and human perception. Others suggest infrasound, low-frequency waves generated by underground water movementa, could explain the unease, the clicking, even the visual phenomena reported at night. The clicking grows louder, a rhythmic drumbeat that echoes through the darkness. The visual phenomena reported at night, glowing orbs, twisted chapiza, are all symptoms of a far greater, more sinister force at work. Some researchers speculate that mineral deposits in the creek bed may have. Yet none of these theories fully account for the arrangement of the bones, or the sense, shared by so many who walk the trail, that they are not merely passing through a place, but being observed by it. Not with malice, but with a kind of patient attention, as though the land is waiting for something to be understood. This is the feeling that has drawn so many to this place, a place of ancient secrets and hidden truths. Bone Creek Trace does not threaten. It does not chase or haunt. It simply persists, quiet in daylight, resonant in darkness. Its banks lined with remnants of lives long ended. Its waters whispering in a tongue no one has yet learned to speak. Those who leave the trail often carry with them a strange calm, as if they have witnessed something sacred, though they cannot say what. And when they look back one last time before the trees close behind them, they sometimes swear the creek has fallen silent. As if, for just a moment, it too was listening. In a secluded bend of the slow-moving Elder River, there exists a quarter-mile stretch known to locals as Ghost Current Way. The name is not poetic. It is literal. Here, the observable laws of hydrology break down. The water flows against gravity. It is not a rapid, churning reversal, but a gentle, insistent upstream current that pushes against the river's natural downstream direction. Leaves and twigs floating on the surface can be seen drifting leisurely toward a point the river has already passed. As if time itself is eddying back on this single, silent stretch. The name is not poetic. It is literal. The effect is most pronounced for vessels. Boats drift backward without engines. A canoeist paddling downstream will suddenly feel their forward momentum stall. If they lift their paddle from the water, the canoe will not remain still. It will gently but surely begin to glide backward, upstream, as if pulled by an invisible cord. The phenomenon is not violent. It is patient and inexorable. Motors strain against it to little effect, batteries draining rapidly as if fighting not just water, but the landscape's intent. The only way to move forward through Ghost Current Way is to paddle hard downstream, fighting the gentle tug every inch, or to pull the vessel onto the bank and portage around the affected area. It is during this unnatural backward drift that the second phenomenon occurs. Voices rise from beneath the surface. They are clear, conversational, and unsettlingly close. They sound calm and inviting. They are the voices of men, women, and sometimes children, speaking in relaxed, everyday tones. You might hear a snippet of a discussion about the weather, a gentle question about your journey, or a warm suggestion to rest a while. The words are always benign, the tone always friendly. They seem to emanate from directly below the hull, or just alongside the boat, as if unseen companions are gliding along the riverbed, looking up and offering conversation. A hydrologist, Dr. Fiona Marks, led a study of the anomaly. Her instruments detected no magnetic variance, no subterranean springs, no logical reason for the water's behavior. During her team's measurements, their small research dinghy was caught in the reverse current. As they drifted backward, Dr. Marks clearly heard a woman's voice, calm and clear, say, "The water is softer here, you should stay a while." She deployed a hydrophone. The recording, played back in the lab, captured only the normal gurgles and flows of river water. The inviting voice was not on the tape. It existed solely in the experience of those adrift on the ghost current. Scientific theories are, by necessity, creative. Some propose a powerful, deep aquifer emptying into the river at this point, creating a localized upwelling that defeats the surface flow. The voices are attributed to a unique acoustic trick, where sounds from a distant farmhouse or road are funneled and focused by the river valley's shape, creating a vivid auditory illusion. These explanations address the mechanics, but they do not touch the compelling, personal nature of the invitation. The voices are attributed to a unique acoustic trick, where sounds from a distant farmhouse or road are funneled and focused by the river valley's shape, creating a vivid auditory illusion. These explanations address the mechanics, but they do not touch the compelling, personal nature of the invitation. The older stories of the river people offer a different perspective. They say this stretch is not a place of current, but of memory. The river, they believe, remembers every voice that ever traveled upon it, every conversation spoken from a boat, every laugh, every sigh. At Ghost Current Way, that memory becomes active. The water flows backward because it is replaying a moment. The boats drift back because they are caught in the recollection of a journey taken long ago. The voices are not ghosts in the traditional sense. They are echoes of contentment, of peaceful trips now past, so strong in their resonance that they manifest as sound. To join that memory, to let go of your own forward struggle, and drift back into a calmer, remembered time. Consequently, those who know the river treat Ghost Current Way with a respectful caution. It is not considered dangerous, but persuasive. Fishermen will row vigorously through it, avoiding the temptation to rest. The calm, inviting voices are understood as a siren song of inaction, a call to surrender to the river's nostalgic pull. To stop fighting the current is to accept the invitation, to become part of the memory, drifting backward toward a point in time that no longer exists. To travel Ghost Current Way is to engage in a gentle struggle. You fight not a raging rapid, but a pervasive, friendly insistence. The water itself wishes to carry you back. The voices from the deep wish for your company. It is a test of will against welcome, of forward purpose against the comfort of the past. The river here does not drown the body. It invites the mind to linger, to turn around, to go back. And with each calm, clear word that rises from below, the offer becomes harder to refuse. As the present moment feels increasingly harsh, compared to the soft, remembered past, flowing steadily, irresistibly, against the grain of the world. The world. Palmetto Hollow Trail cuts through a low stretch of scrubland where the ground stays damp and the air hangs heavy. The path is narrow and winding, barely wider than a single person in places. Thick palmetto bushes crowd both sides, their fan-shaped leaves overlapping until the trail feels carved rather than cleared. During the day, the trail feels enclosed but manageable. Sunlight filters through in broken fragments, catching on sharp leaf edges and casting irregular patterns on the ground. Sounds from outside the trail fade quickly, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the dull press of humid air. Their leaves interlock at shoulder height, forming walls that block sight in every direction. Looking into the bushes reveals nothing but layered green and shadow. The trail twists often, forcing hikers to move slowly and stay alert. As the light fades, the enclosure becomes oppressive. Shadows thicken between the leaves, blending together until depth is difficult to judge. The path seems to narrow further, though measurements show no change. Each step forward feels deliberate, as if moving through resistance rather than open air. Shadows move rapidly between leaves. Hikers first notice quick shifts in the periphery. A dark shape slides behind the palmettos. A patch of shadow breaks away and vanishes deeper into the foliage. The movement is fast and silent, too smooth to be caused by wind or wildlife. Stopping to look directly reveals nothing. The bushes remain still. Leaves do not shake. The shadows reappear only when attention drifts, darting just out of focus, never fully visible. The sensation builds with continued movement. The trail feels alive with motion, though nothing ever steps onto the path. The shadows remain confined to the leaves, weaving through gaps that seem too small to pass through. Then comes the physical sensation. Hikers feel brushed from all sides at once. The contact is light but unmistakable. A pass across the arm. A slide along the back. A sensation arrives simultaneously from multiple directions, too coordinated to be accidental. The feeling is not forceful. It resembles foliage brushing skin, yet it occurs even where leaves are several inches away. Clothing shifts slightly. Skin prickles. The contact lasts only a moment, then repeats as movement continues. Those who stop feel it more intensely. Standing still allows the brushing sensation to gather, as if the surrounding space closes inward. Moving again causes the feeling to spread out, following pace rather than resisting it. No sound accompanies the contact. The palmettos remain visually unchanged. The sensation exists without evidence, leaving hikers questioning their perception even as their bodies respond instinctively. Some attempt to hurry through. Speeding up increases the frequency of shadow movement. The brushing sensation becomes more constant, no longer intermittent. The trail seems to elongate, each turn revealing another stretch of identical foliage. Others slow down, hoping for relief. Slowing causes the shadows to cluster closer together, darting rapidly just beyond sight. The brushing becomes more deliberate, focused on exposed skin rather than clothing. Stepping into open ground brings immediate relief. Air feels lighter. Space returns. The shadows vanish. The brushing sensation stops without transition, as if a boundary has been crossed. It is only afterward that hikers notice the marks. Scratches appear afterward. They are thin and shallow, often running parallel across arms, necks, or legs. The scratches do not bleed. Medical examinations find nothing unusual. They surface gradually, becoming visible minutes after leaving the trail. Skin feels warm and sensitive where they appear. Some hikers count multiple marks, evenly spaced and surprisingly uniform. The scratches heal quickly, fading within a day or two. There are no signs of infection or deep injury. The marks leave no scars, only memory. Local guides acknowledge the phenomenon cautiously. They warn hikers to cover exposed skin and avoid the trail during low light conditions. When pressed for explanation, they speak of the palmettos as protective rather than hostile, a space that reacts to intrusion rather than invites it. Historical notes describe the area as unsettled. Early travelers avoided cutting through the hollow, preferring longer routes around it. Accounts mention the feeling of being touched without contact and the sense of movement just beyond sight. Some believe the palmettos create a natural illusion. They suggest overlapping leaves and limited visibility cause the brain to misinterpret shadow and sensation. According to this view, scratches come from unnoticed contact with foliage during passage. Yet this explanation fails to satisfy those who experienced the brushing in open gaps or felt contact where no leaves could reach. Others believe the hollow holds residual motion. They say the space remembers passage, replaying it when new movement enters. In this telling, the shadows and sensations are echoes rather than entities, responses shaped by repetition over time. A smaller number believe the trail itself is aware. They describe Palmetto Hollow as a corridor that narrows intentionally, testing boundaries through touch rather than obstruction. The scratches, in this view, are not attacks but markers, proof of passage rather than harm. No recordings have captured the shadows clearly. Cameras pick up leaf movement and shifting light, but nothing distinct. Audio equipment records only ambient sound. The experience remains deeply personal, occurring just outside the reach of documentation. Those who return often do so during full daylight. Even then, some report fleeting movement and brief contact, though less intense. The trail never feels entirely passive, even under bright sun. Most hikers choose not to return at all. The memory of being brushed from all sides, of shadows darting too quickly to track, lingers long after the scratches fade. Palmetto Hollow Trail remains open and unmarked. No warning signs. No closures. The path blends into the surrounding landscape, offering no indication of what it holds beyond the first turn. By day, it is simply dense vegetation and narrow ground. By night or dusk, it becomes something else. A place where visibility fails, where shadows move with intent, where space itself feels crowded. A place where visibility fails, where shadows move with intent, where space itself feels crowded. Those who pass through carry away thin lines on their skin and a deeper awareness of how close unseen things can feel when the world closes in. Those who pass through carry away thin lines on their skin and a deeper awareness of how close unseen things can feel when the world closes in. Palmetto Hollow Trail does not chase. It does not trap. It surrounds. And when hikers emerge into open air, scratched and unsettled, the trail remains behind them, leaves settling back into place, shadows stilling, as if nothing happened at all. Black land stretches out before us, where the soil darkens and the air cools. The land dips gently before opening into a wide basin of still water. Broken only by thin reeds and low grasses. From a distance, the marsh looks calm and reflective, like a polished surface laid carefully into the landscape. On clear days, the water reflects the sky perfectly. Clouds drift across its surface with sharp clarity. Blue appears deeper. White seems brighter. The reflection is so precise that depth becomes difficult to judge. Visitors often pause at the edge, unsure where sky ends and water begins. The stillness is complete. Wind rarely disturbs the surface. Even when the surrounding grasses sway, the marsh remains unmoved. Ripples fade quickly, swallowed by the dark water as if erased. Sound feels reduced here, as though the air absorbs it before it can travel far. At first, the reflection feels peaceful. People linger, drawn by the unusual clarity. Cameras come out. Conversations soften. There is a sense of standing before something rare and delicate. The marsh appears passive, content to mirror whatever looks down upon it. Then the reflection changes. A cloud seems to stretch unnaturally. A shape forms that does not match the sky above. Faces begin to appear among the reflected clouds. They are faint at first, pale outlines forming where no such shapes exist overhead. Eyes emerge from patches of white. Mouths curve out of drifting vapor. The expressions are neutral, almost calm, as if caught mid-observation rather than emotion. They shift only as the reflection shifts, bound to the surface of the water. Looking up reveals nothing unusual in the sky. Looking back down restores the image, clearer now, as if attention has sharpened it. Those who notice the faces feel an immediate physical response. Dizziness sets in, gentle at first, then stronger. The ground seems to tilt slightly. Balance becomes uncertain. Breathing feels shallow, as if the chest cannot expand fully. A sense of fear follows close behind, sudden and disproportionate. The longer one looks, the worse it becomes. The faces grow more defined, more numerous. They do not speak or gesture. They simply look back, mirroring the observer's gaze. Some visitors report recognizing features that feel familiar, though they cannot place them. Others feel certain the faces are studying them specifically. Turning away helps, but not immediately. Even after breaking eye contact with the water, the sensation lingers. Vision swims. Heart rate remains elevated. The fear does not fade quickly, clinging like a residual echo. Those who stay too long report hearing faint sounds. Not voices exactly, but pressure, like the suggestion of sound forming and dissolving. The air feels thicker near the marsh edge, pressing gently against the ears. Some describe a soft ringing that builds the longer they remain. The water itself remains silent. No movement disturbs the surface. The reflection holds steady, patient, as if waiting for attention to return. The faces do not pursue those who step back, but they do not vanish either. They remain present, suspended in the mirrored sky. People who leave the marsh often do so abruptly. Hands shake. Legs feel weak. Some sit down a short distance away, needing time to regain composure. Others walk quickly without looking back, unwilling to risk another glance. Witnesses describe trembling that continues for several minutes, sometimes longer. Researchers have examined Black Mirror Marsh for natural explanations. They note the unusual stillness of the water and its dark coloration, which enhances reflection. Optical effects can distort perception, especially under certain lighting conditions. Fatigue, expectation, and suggestion can shape what the brain believes it sees. Yet these explanations fall short for many. Reports of faces are remarkably consistent across visitors unfamiliar with one another. Descriptions align in detail and progression. The dizziness and fear follow similar patterns, regardless of prior knowledge. Audio and video recordings fail to capture the effect. Footage shows only sky and cloud reflected cleanly on the surface. No faces appear in recordings, even when observers insist they were visible moments earlier. The phenomenon seems tied to direct observation alone. Local residents treat the marsh with caution. They do not forbid visiting, but they advise against staring. They say the water reflects more than the sky. They say it shows what is looking back, not what is above. Older stories mention the marsh as a place of stillness where people would stop to consider important decisions. Some accounts warn that looking too deeply invites reflection that is difficult to escape. These stories are shared quietly, without embellishment. Most visitors learn quickly. They glance at the water, appreciate its clarity, then move on. Those who linger longer often regret it. The marsh does not call out or draw people in physically. It simply offers a surface that responds to attention in ways that feel personal and unsettling. The faces never leave the water. They do not follow. They do not appear elsewhere. Once distance is gained, the experience begins to fade, leaving behind only the memory of that moment of recognition and the fear that came with it. Black Mirror Marsh remains unchanged. The water continues to reflect the sky with flawless precision. Clouds drift. Light shifts. On the surface, everything appears calm and ordinary. Yet those who have seen more than clouds know the difference. They remember the instant the reflection broke from expectation, the way their body reacted before thought could intervene. They remember how quickly fascination turned into fear. Most do not return. And those who do keep their visits brief, careful not to look too long into the water that mirrors the sky so perfectly, until it decides to mirror something else instead. Lost Step path winds through low wetlands where land and water blur together. The path feels uncertain. The ground shifts subtly beneath each step, firm in some places and soft in others. Water glints on either side, shallow near the edge, darker farther out. Reeds lean inward, brushing against shoulders and arms, making the trail feel more enclosed than it truly is. Most people notice the footprints first. They appear ahead on the path, pressed clearly into damp earth. The impressions look recent, sharp at the edges, as if made moments ago. They follow the center of the trail at a steady pace, spaced evenly, leading forward with quiet confidence. Travelers often assume someone else is just ahead. The idea feels comforting, reassuring. The path seems less lonely with proof that another person has passed through. But the footprints never change. No matter how long one walks, the distance between traveler and prints remains the same. They neither grow closer nor fade away. They simply exist ahead, guiding forward without revealing their source. At a certain point, the footprints stop. They end abruptly in the middle of the path, toes forward, heels pressed deep, as if the person who made them vanished mid-stride. There is no sign of turning around. No disturbance beyond the final step. Just a sudden absence where motion should have continued. Stepping into the footprints feels wrong. The impressions are the correct size, the correct shape, yet aligning a foot with them creates an immediate sense of imbalance. Those who test it carefully report a strange sensation, like standing on a surface that disagrees with gravity. Muscles tense automatically. Balance becomes difficult to maintain, even when standing still. The earth beside them appears similar, but the moment weight shifts away from the center of the path, the ground softens dramatically. Several incidents have occurred here. Travelers who stepped too close to the edge, distracted by the footprints, lost their balance and fell into deeper water concealed beneath reeds and shadow. The drop is sudden, surprising, and disorienting, though not usually dangerous when help is nearby. Those who fall often describe the same sequence. A misstep. A sudden loss of orientation. The feeling that the ground moved rather than their foot. They emerge shaken, confused, and unsure how such a simple path caused the fall. The footprints are always gone afterward. Once someone reaches the place where they ended, the impressions fade quickly, smoothing over as if pressed from wet sand. Within minutes, there is no trace they were ever there. Those who turn back sometimes see them again later, reappearing farther along the trail, fresh and distinct, repeating the same pattern. The emotional effect lingers longer than the physical risk. Travelers report a heightened awareness of each step after encountering the footprints. Walking becomes deliberate. Confidence fades. The path no longer feels like a passive surface, but an active participant in movement. Sounds change here as well. Water laps softly, closer than expected. The marsh seems to absorb noise behind while amplifying it ahead. They explain the danger in practical terms: unstable ground, hidden water, shifting soil. Yet their tone often suggests there is more they choose not to say. Old records hint at the path's history. Long before it was marked, people crossed the wetlands here out of necessity. Accidents were common, especially at night or in poor visibility. Notes mention sudden missteps and unexplained falls. Written plainly without speculation. Some accounts describe the ground as misleading. Appearing solid where it was not, and unreliable where it should have held. Modern explanations point to erosion and subsurface water channels. The path shifts with seasons. Footprints can hold water differently, altering surface tension and perception. These explanations account for some behavior, but not the precision of the appearances. The footprints always appear ahead, never behind. They always stop at the same type of place, where the path narrows slightly and the water deepens just beyond. They always feel wrong to step into, even before balance is tested. Those who ignore the warning sensation often regret it. The deepest water near Lost Step Path is not visible from the trail. Reeds and reflection hide its depth well. Falling in feels like stepping into empty space, the body dropping farther than expected. Panic follows quickly, fueled by surprise rather than actual danger. Afterward, many report a lingering sense of being misled. Not tricked exactly, but guided poorly, as if they followed instructions that were never meant for them. Visitors who pass through safely often feel relief disproportionate to the effort required. Reaching solid ground brings a release of tension they did not realize had built. Looking back, the path appears ordinary again, quiet and unremarkable. No footprints remain. By daylight, Lost Step Path shows no sign of its disturbances. The earth is smooth. Water lies still. The trail looks safe, even inviting. It is difficult to believe anything there could cause such confusion. Yet those who have walked it remember clearly. They remember footprints that appeared without source. They remember how wrong it felt to follow them. They remember the sudden loss of balance, the water rushing up too fast. They remember the realization that the path was not entirely what it seemed. Lost Step Path remains open, lightly marked, and easy to underestimate. The safest way across is the simplest. Watch your own steps. Stay centered. And if footprints appear ahead, stop before they do, because some paths are meant to be walked without following anyone at all. Tucked between two weathered ridgelines in a region seldom featured on modern maps lies a narrow wetland passage known as Night Reed Crossing. From a distance, it appears unremarkable, a shallow, slow-moving channel flanked by tall, slender reeds that rise like sentinels from the dark, peaty soil. Their feathery tips brush the sky, forming a living corridor no wider than a single footpath. By daylight, the place hums with dragonflies and the occasional call of a marsh wren. It is peaceful. Tranquil. Deceptively so. The first sign that something here defies ordinary explanation comes at dusk. As the sun dips below the western ridge, the wind often stills. Trees cease their rustling. And yet, the reeds continue to move. Not in gusts or waves, but in slow, undulating sweeps, as though stirred by an unseen current flowing through the air itself. The motion is deliberate, almost choreographed, ripple after ripple passing soundlessly from one end of the crossing to the other. Observers note that compass needles held near the reed sometimes waver, though no magnetic source has ever been detected. Then, as full darkness settles, another phenomenon begins. A sound recedes not from any one direction, but from the reeds themselves. Soft at first, barely audible over the distant call of an owl. It soon gains presence. A series of hushed syllables, repeated in steady, measured intervals. The cadence is unmistakable, a rising tone, a pause, two falling notes, another pause. Over and over. The pattern shifts subtly throughout the night, but never loses its underlying rhythm. Many who hear it describe it as chanting. Not in any known language, yet strangely familiar in its structure, like a lullaby half remembered from childhood. Acoustic analysis reveals layered frequencies, some within human hearing, others just below threshold, creating a harmonic resonance that seems to vibrate not only in the ears, but in the chest, the bones, the very core of the body. This is when the sensation begins. Visitors standing at the edge of the crossing report a sudden, gentle pressure settling over their sternum, as if an invisible hand rests there and not pushing, not threatening, but anchoring. Breathing does not become difficult, yet it deepens, slows, as though the body is adjusting to a new rhythm imposed from without. Some feel a sense of profound stillness, as if time itself has thickened around them. Others describe an overwhelming awareness of their own heartbeat, echoing the cadence of the whispers. No one has ever been harmed at night reed crossing. There are no accounts of injury, disorientation, or lasting psychological distress. In fact, many who return speak of a lingering calm, a quiet clarity that stays with them for days. Yet almost all agree on one detail: they felt, in that moment, unmistakably seen. Not watched in the sense of surveillance, but acknowledged, included, briefly, in something vast and ancient. Scientists have studied the reeds extensively. Soil samples show elevated levels of naturally occurring piezoelectric mineralsa, crystals that generate small electrical charges under pressure. Could these, in turn, cause the reeds to vibrate sympathetically, producing both movement and sound? The theory is plausible, yet incomplete. The chest pressure remains unexplained. Local oral tradition offers a different perspective. Stories passed down through generations speak of the crossing as a threshold. Not between worlds, but between states of attention. Where humans, if they stand quietly long enough, remember how to listen. They do not call the sound voices. They call it the breathing of the earth. Night reed crossing does not beckon. It does not warn or welcome. It simply exists, night after night, swaying in the absence of wind. Murmuring in the language of rhythm and resonance. Those who pause long enough to feel the weight on their chests often leave with the same quiet question echoing in their minds. Was the pressure a presence, or an invitation? And as dawn approaches, the whispers fade. The reeds still. The crossing returns to silence, waiting not for believers or skeptics, but for the next listener willing to stand still and breathe in harmony with something older than words. Deep in the heart of the southern cypress swamps, there runs a narrow, seldom used path known as the Hanging Moss Route. It is a tunnel of perpetual twilight, formed by the interlocking branches of ancient trees. The defining feature of this path is not the trees themselves, but what hangs from them. Spanish moss drapes thickly here. It does not hang in wispy tendrils, but in dense, gray-green curtains that block the sun and sway with a life of their own in the still, humid air. Walking the route requires pushing through these fibrous veils, feeling them brush against your face, your arms, your hands. Initially, the sensation is what one might expect. The moss is cool, slightly damp, and carries the earthy scent of decay and damp bark. But travelers who have navigated the route report a progression in the touch. After several minutes of walking, as the canopy thickens and the light fades to a murky green, the brush of the moss begins to change. It feels less like passive vegetation and more like deliberate contact. Some feel fingers tightening briefly. It is not a grab, but a precise, momentary pressure, as if a hand hidden within the moss has gently squeezed an arm, or closed briefly around a wrist. The most compelling evidence, however, is not the feeling, but the aftermath. These are not scratches or cuts from rough foliage. They are faint, grayish impressions, like the memory of a handprint. A traveler might find 4 parallel, smudged lines around their forearm, exactly where they felt the brief tightening. Another might discover a pale, palm-shaped mark on the back of their neck. The marks are not painful. They feel cool to the touch, and they fade completely within a few hours, leaving no trace except in the memory of the one who bore them. A botanist named Dr. Helen Vance conducted a survey of the Rutia's unique microclimate. She was a skeptic, attributing the stories to the power of suggestion in a genuinely oppressive environment. During her survey, she deliberately walked slowly, taking samples. She documented the initial brush of the moss, noting its unusual density. Then, in her field notes, she wrote a simple, stark sentence. At marker post 3, something held my elbow. It was not a snag. It was a grip. She stopped, and the sensation released. That evening, in her tent, she examined her arm under bright light. There, on her skin, were 4 faint, gray ovals. Scientific analysis offers potential explanations. The moss in this area could be host to a unique, microscopic organism. Causes a temporary, localized neural stimulation, creating the illusion of pressure. The marks could be a very mild allergic reaction or a transient dermatological effect from unusual lichens or fungi growing within the moss. The mind, isolated and strained in a strange environment, could be constructing a tactile hallucination. To explain the intense physical contact, with the marks being a psychosomatic manifestation. Local legends, passed down through generations of swamp dwellers, tell a different story. They say the moss is not just a plant. It is a network, a sensory organ for the swamp itself. The hanging moss route is a place where the land is particularly aware. The gentle pressure is not an attack, but a check. A way for the ancient consciousness of the wetland to know who is passing through its most secluded corridors. The marks are a form of acknowledgement, a tag placed upon a visitor. They signify that you have been noted, your presence logged in a memory that is not human. To receive the marks is to be accepted, however temporarily, into the swamp's quiet, patient awareness. Those who know the swamp treat the route with a solemn respect. They move through it deliberately, without haste, accepting the brush of the moss as one might accept a search at a border. To panic or thrash is considered disrespectful. The brief tightening is understood as a request to pause, to be still for a moment and be recognized. The marks are worn not as wounds, but as passes. To walk the hanging moss route is to submit to the inspection by something vast and old. The air is thick, the light is green. And the silence is broken only by the drip of water. Each curtain of moss is a threshold. The touch on your skin is a question. The faint, fading marks are the answer. You are leaving a temporary impression on the swamp. Just as it leaves a temporary impression on you. It is a transaction of awareness, a silent conversation between visitor and place, conducted through a language of touch and memory, written on the skin in shades of gray and green. A silent conversation between visitor and place, conducted through a language of touch and memory, written on the skin in shades of gray and green. Conducted through a language of touch and memory, written on the skin in shades of gray and green. Written on the skin in shades of gray and green. Written on the skin in shades of gray and green. Crooked Moon Run follows a narrow ridge line through open forest where the trees thin just enough to reveal the sky. The trail is well marked during the day, worn smooth by years of use, and bordered by low brush and pale stones. The last light fades slowly here, stretching the evening longer than expected. Shadows linger between trees. Sounds soften. The forest seems to hold its breath as darkness settles in. Hikers often start their walk just before dusk. When the moon rises above Crooked Moon Run, it never looks quite right. The moon appears distorted above this trail. It hangs low and uneven, its shape stretched or tilted as if viewed through warped glass. Some describe it as elongated. Others say it looks bent, like a reflection disturbed by water. The distortion remains even when clouds pass or the moon climbs higher. Looking away does not correct it. When hikers glance back at the moon, the shape remains altered. It does not wobble or shift suddenly. It simply exists in that warped form, steady and unchanging. As the night deepens, perception begins to slip. Time feels slow. Steps feel heavier. Breathing becomes deliberate. Minutes stretch without clear markers. The sense of duration no longer matches movement. The path remains visible. The ground feels solid beneath their feet. Yet progress becomes difficult to measure. Hikers report walking for hours without progress. The same bend in the trail appears again and again. The same cluster of rocks. The same leaning tree. Lantern light reveals identical ground each time, as if the trail has folded in on itself. Turning around does not help. Walking back feels the same as moving forward. The moon remains crooked overhead, casting uneven light that flattens depth and distance. The sense of direction weakens quickly. At this point, panic sets in quickly. The realization does not arrive gradually. It strikes all at once. The body reacts before the mind fully understands. Heart rate increases. Breathing shortens. Moments stretch uncomfortably. Every decision feels delayed. Each step forward carries doubt. The longer hikers remain on the trail, the more difficult it becomes to remain calm. Some attempt to run. Running changes nothing. Speed does not shorten the distance. Exhaustion arrives quickly, unearned by visible effort. Muscles tire while the surroundings remain unchanged. Others stop completely. Stopping creates a different discomfort. Stillness makes the silence louder. The crooked moon seems closer, heavier in the sky. The forest feels attentive, as if waiting for movement to resume. Sounds behave strangely here. Footsteps sound delayed, as if echoing back after they occur. Breathing feels too loud, then suddenly too quiet. Voices spoken aloud seem to lose strength, fading before reaching the trees. No wildlife appears. There are no insects, no distant calls, no rustling animals. The forest feels emptied of life, leaving only the trail and the distorted moon overhead. Some hikers report physical sensations. A slight pressure behind the eyes. A sense of imbalance. Difficulty focusing on distant objects. These sensations increase as panic builds, feeding the feeling that something is wrong beyond simple disorientation. Attempts to use navigation tools fail. Compasses spin or settle inconsistently. Even when functioning, the readings do not align with the visible trail. The most unsettling detail remains the moon. Local guides avoid Crooked Moon Run at night. They speak of it as a place where distance breaks down. According to them, the trail does not trap people physically, but perceptually. It alters how time and space are felt, making progress difficult to recognize. Historical accounts mention travelers who camped overnight unintentionally. They believed they had walked for only minutes before stopping to rest. only to realize at dawn that hours had passed. In daylight, the trail appeared normal again, its length unchanged. Some believe the ridge line amplifies lunar illusion. They suggest the angle of the land and tree spacing distort perspective, creating a false sense of repetition. This explanation does not fully account for the consistent reports of slowed time and emotional escalation. Others believe Crooked Moon Run occupies a transitional space. They describe it as a corridor where normal measures of time loosen briefly. In this telling, the trail does not hold people, but suspends them, delaying their passage without physical restraint. Rescue efforts have never found anyone permanently lost here. Those who remain calm and continue walking eventually emerge, often at dawn or just before. The transition is abrupt. One moment, the forest feels endless. The next, the path opens onto familiar ground. The moon looks normal again. Time resumes its usual pace. Those who exit often feel shaken. They struggle to reconcile their memories with the distance traveled. Hours of walking leave no corresponding fatigue. Their watches confirm the passage of time, though it felt distorted. Many choose not to return. Those who do return only walk the trail during daylight, when the moon cannot influence perception. Even then, some report lingering unease near dusk. Crooked Moon Run remains open and unchanged. By day, it is an ordinary trail. By night, it becomes something more difficult to define. A place where the sky looks wrong, where time stretches thin, and where panic arrives without clear cause. The trail does not threaten or pursue. It does not block the way or conceal danger. It simply alters experience, slowing time and progress until the mind reacts. Those who walk Crooked Moon Run after dark learn quickly how fragile orientation can be. They learn that panic grows fastest when time refuses to move forward. And when they finally step free beneath a normal moon, they carry with them the unsettling knowledge that for a few long hours, the world bent slightly out of shape. And they were unable to tell how far they had truly gone. Bloodroot Backway curves through a low marsh where water moves slowly and the ground never fully dries. The path is old, barely maintained, used mostly by locals who know how quickly the land can change. Thick plants crowd the edges of the water, their roots tangled beneath the surface like veins spreading through mud. The water carries a faint red tint, most visible where sunlight reaches shallow pools. Their roots release a natural pigment that bleeds gently into the water, staining it in soft shades of rust and crimson. Locals have known this for generations. It is why the Backway earned its name. In daylight, the red looks thin and diluted, almost translucent. At night, it deepens. As the sun drops, the marsh darkens unevenly. Shadows settle low, and the red in the water grows heavier, richer, absorbing what little light remains. The air cools quickly after sunset. Mist rises close to the ground, clinging to reeds and grasses. Insects quiet. Wind slows. The marsh takes on a thick stillness that feels intentional rather than accidental. That is when people begin to hear it. A low, steady thumping sound, distant at first. Slow and rhythmic. Too regular to be water, too organic to be machinery. Walking alone at night heightens awareness of the body. Heart rate becomes noticeable. Breathing sounds louder. Many convince themselves the sound is internal, a trick of focus and silence. Then the rhythm changes. The sound grows louder without speeding up. It moves independently of the Listenera's pace. Stopping does not stop it. Walking faster does not change its tempo. The beat remains steady, measured, and persistent. Those who turn their head hear it shift position, always seeming to come from behind or just out of sight. The marsh carries the sound easily, bouncing it off water and low ground so direction becomes impossible to pin down. The deeper one goes along the backway, the clearer the heartbeat becomes. It does not echo sharply. It pulses, heavy and full, felt as much as heard. Some describe feeling it in their chest, others in their feet, as if the ground itself is responding to the rhythm. The red water reflects faint movement with each beat. Small ripples spread outward in time with the sound, disturbing the surface just enough to break reflections. The effect is subtle, visible only if one is already watching closely. Fear builds slowly. It does not strike suddenly or forcefully. It settles in layers, tightening muscles and narrowing focus. The urge to leave becomes strong, but the path feels longer than it should. Those who attempt to hurry often make mistakes. The heartbeat grows louder, closer, as if responding to the panic. Some report hearing more than one beat. A second rhythm joins the first, slightly out of sync. Then another. The marsh fills with overlapping pulses, creating a layered thudding that surrounds rather than follows. It feels as though the land itself has developed a circulatory system, and the traveler has stepped into its center. Turning around does not help. The sound repositions, staying behind or beside no matter which direction is chosen. The backway seems to stretch, bends appearing where none were remembered. Familiar landmarks vanish into shadow. Those who leave the path and step into the marsh fare worse. The ground becomes unstable immediately. Water deepens without warning. The heartbeat intensifies, vibrating through the body with uncomfortable clarity. Most retreat quickly, shaken and disoriented, struggling back onto firmer ground. The sound never speaks. There are no voices, no words hidden in the rhythm. The beat does not threaten or warn. It simply continues. Historical records about the area are limited. Old journals mention the red water and advise against night travel. Some entries describe strange physical sensations and an oppressive atmosphere after dark. None mention heartbeats directly, but several refer to the marsh as alive in a way that felt too literal for comfort. Modern recordings fail to capture the sound. Audio equipment picks up ambient noise but not the rhythmic pulse described by witnesses. Recordings played back later reveal only wind, insects, and water. The heartbeat seems to exist only for those present within the marsh. Those who manage to leave the backway notice the change immediately. The sound stops the moment firm ground is reached. The air feels lighter. The red in the water fades back to its daytime hue. The marsh resumes its ordinary, muted life. The body takes longer to recover. Hands shake. Legs feel weak. Heart rate remains elevated for minutes afterward. Some sit down, needing time to separate their own pulse from the one they heard following them. People who experience the heartbeat rarely return at night. They speak about it carefully, choosing words that feel inadequate. They describe the sound as close and personal. As if it was aware of them specifically. The idea unsettles them more than the fear itself. Bloodroot Backway remains open, though few use it after dark. During the day, it is simply a marsh path with red-stained water and thick plant life. Birds move through it. Sunlight reflects off shallow pools. Nothing suggests danger. At night, the marsh changes character. The red deepens. Sound recedes. And somewhere within the water and roots, a steady rhythm begins, patient and unwavering. Those who hear it understand quickly that it is not meant to be matched or followed. It is not a warning meant to save or threaten. It is simply there, marking presence and movement in a place where land and water blend too closely. Walking away from it brings relief, but not forgetfulness. Long after leaving the marsh, in quiet moments, some find themselves listening more closely to their own heartbeat. wondering briefly whether the sound they hear is truly theirs alone, or if part of the marsh's rhythm followed them farther than they realized. Hollow Gator Path cuts through a wide stretch of southern wetlands where waterways braid together and vegetation rises thick and tall. It is marked on some maps as a minor passage, a shortcut between larger channels, but few people choose to use it willingly. Those who know the region well speak of it with caution, noting not what happens there, but what does not. Gators avoid this trail. In surrounding waters, they are common and visible. Eyes break the surface at dusk. Ripples move slowly through reeds. Tails slide beneath lily pads with practiced ease. Yet along Hollow Gator Path, the water remains undisturbed. Even during warm months, when gators should be most active, the channel stays empty. The absence is immediate and noticeable. The banks show no slides where heavy bodies enter the water. Mud remains smooth. Vegetation grows unchecked along the edges, undisturbed by passing animals. It feels less like a quiet place and more like a place being deliberately left alone. Boaters entering the path often describe a strange sensation. The water looks normal, dark and reflective, but it feels wrong. Paddles dip in without resistance, yet the movement lacks the familiar drag of current or life. The channel does not flow so much as it holds still. Sound behaves differently here. Engines seem louder, more intrusive. Voices fall flat, swallowed quickly by the air. Even the usual wetland chorus fades, replaced by a low, hollow quiet that presses inward. The water feels empty. Not shallow, not deep, but vacant. As if it contains space without substance. Those who trail their hands along the surface describe a subtle cold that does not match the temperature of surrounding water. It clings briefly, then releases, leaving skin tingling without clear cause. The water bulges gently, then smooths again. No wake follows. No bubbles rise. The movement is too slow and broad to be fish, too controlled to be debris. Boaters report seeing them only from the corner of the eye, as if direct attention causes them to sink deeper. Looking straight down reveals nothing but dark water and faint outlines that refuse to sharpen. Those who remain still long enough sometimes feel a shift beneath their boats. A subtle lift, then release. As if the water itself adjusted to their presence, accommodating weight without protest. Panic rarely comes immediately. Instead, there is a growing discomfort, a sense of being out of place. The channel feels narrow despite its width. Progress slows, not from resistance, but hesitation. Many turn back without fully understanding why. Boaters refuse to pass through Hollow Gator Path after dark. At night, the water absorbs light completely. Navigation lights fail to reflect. Headlamps reveal only a flat black surface that gives no sense of depth or distance. The shoreline becomes indistinct, blending into shadow. Those who have attempted the passage after sunset describe intense disorientation. The channel feels longer than it should be. Landmarks disappear. The sense of direction weakens. Replaced by an awareness of what lies below rather than ahead. The large shapes are more noticeable at night. They move closer to the surface, their passage marked by slow, deliberate swells. Boats rock gently without cause. Some claim they heard something beneath the surface during these encounters. Not splashing or grinding, but a low vibration felt more than heard. A pressure that traveled upward through the hull, lingering just long enough to be unmistakable. No grabs, no collisions, no aggressive actions. The danger of Hollow Gator Path does not come from attack, but from presence. From the feeling that something large is there, aware, and uninterested in interaction. Local fishermen avoid the channel entirely. They say nets come back empty when cast nearby. Lines drift without bite. The water yields nothing, as if stripped of life despite appearing healthy. Environmental surveys show no contamination. Oxygen levels are normal. Plant life thrives. By all measurable standards, the channel should support wildlife. Yet it does not. Historical records suggest the path was once a natural sink, a place where floodwaters pooled and drained slowly back into the system. Over time, sediment reshaped it into a navigable channel. The water retained its depth, but not its flow. Old accounts mention livestock refusing to drink there. Canoes drifting oddly, as if nudged from below. These notes are brief, written without emphasis, then forgotten as routes changed. Modern explanations focus on subsurface cavities and soft sediment layers. They suggest that water displacement could create the illusion of movement. That temperature differences might affect sensation. But these theories do not explain why animals avoid the area so consistently. Gators, which are highly sensitive to vibration and water pressure, will not cross Hollow Gator Path, even when it shortens their route significantly. They turn away at the edges, choosing longer paths through crowded waters instead. Those who respect this avoidance tend to stay safe. Visitors who pass through quickly, without stopping or lingering, often report little more than discomfort. Those who slow down, who pause to observe the water too closely, leave shaken, unsure how long they were there. Dreams sometimes follow. Dreams of floating above dark water, watching shapes move beneath without urgency. Waking brings a sense of relief, but also a lingering awareness of depth that does not fade easily. By daylight, Hollow Gator Path looks deceptively calm. Sunlight reflects off the surface. The channel appears open and accessible. Birds pass overhead. The surrounding wetlands resume their usual activity just beyond its edges. Nothing warns of what lies beneath. Yet the emptiness remains. The silence persists. And the large shapes continue to move below, unseen and unchallenged. Hollow Gator Path does not trap or threaten. It does not surge or resist. It simply exists as a space that does not welcome life, a corridor of water that feels hollow rather than full. Those who know the wetlands trust the instincts of the animals. If gators avoid a place, they say, there is a reason. And when night falls, and the water turns black and unreadable, even the most experienced boaters choose longer routes, steering clear of the channel where nothing surfaces, nothing ripples, and something large moves silently below, content to remain unseen. High in the coastal highlands, where the land rises sharply from the sea, and cool ocean currents meet the warmer breath of the continent. Where the land rises sharply from the sea and cool ocean currents meet the warmer breath of the continent, lies a narrow footpath known only as Fog Drift Trail. Begins at the edge of a sunlit meadow, winds through a stand of wind-sculpted cypress, and then descends into a shallow ravine carved by centuries of gentle runoff. The trail itself is unremarkably a packed earth, occasional stepping stones, the faint scent of damp bark and wild thyme. A packed earth, occasional stepping stones, the faint scent of damp bark and wild thyme. And occasional stepping stones. The faint scent of damp bark and wild thyme. The trail itself is unremarkably a packed earth, occasional stepping stones, the faint scent of damp bark and wild thyme. What makes it extraordinary is not what is seen, but what is felt and heard. When the fog arrives, the change is never gradual. One moment, the air is clear, the view stretching for miles across rolling hills and distant pine ridges. The next, a pale wall appears on the horizon, swift and silent, racing forward like a tide drawn by unseen gravity. Within minutes, the world contracts. Trees vanish mid-trunk. The sky softens into a seamless dome of pearl gray. Visibility drops to mere feet. And just like that, the hiker is no longer walking through a landscape, but through a presence. Sound alters immediately. Birdsong fades. Footsteps lose their crispness, absorbed by the dense, moisture-laden air. This acoustic dampening is well understood scientifically. A fog scatters and muffles sound waves, especially higher frequencies. Yet here, something deeper occurs. In the silence that follows, the mind does not rest. It listens. And sometimes, it hears. Not shouts or calls from afar, but voices soft, close, unmistakably near. A murmur just behind the left shoulder. A sigh at ear level. A single word, clear and calm, spoken as though by someone walking side by side. The tone is never alarming. It carries neither urgency nor warning, only familiarity, as if continuing a conversation that began long ago. Those who experience it often turn instinctively, expecting to meet the gaze of a fellow traveler. But there is no one. Reaching out, hand extended into the space where the voice seemed to originate, meets only cool, clinging mist. Dozens of documented accounts describe this phenomenon. Hikers, rangers, geologists, even seasoned search and rescue teams all report the same sequence. The swift arrival of fog, the hush, the voice, the instinctive turn, the empty space. Audio recorders, however, capture nothing unusual. Only ambient noise, slightly dampened. The voices exist solely in real time, for the individual, in the moment. Some speculate that infrasound are low-frequency vibrations generated by ocean swells interacting with the cliffside geologia may stimulate the auditory cortex in ways that mimic human speech. Others suggest pareidolia, the mind's tendency to find pattern in randomness, heightened by sensory deprivation. These explanations hold merit, yet they do not account for the consistency of the experience, nor its emotional resonance. Many who hear the voices describe not fear, but a fleeting sense of comfort. Of brief, wordless reunion. They walk it with reverence. Not in response to the voices, but in acknowledgement of them. Fog Drift Trail does not deceive. It does not lure or entrap. It simply reveals, for a few suspended minutes, how thin the line can be between solitude and connection. How silence, under the right conditions, can sound remarkably like presence. The fog always lifts. Sometimes within minutes, sometimes hours. When it does, the world returns with startling clarity. Colors deepen. Sounds sharpen. The trail resumes its ordinary appearance, as though nothing had happened. Yet those who have stood within the mist, who have heard a voice whisper just beside them and reached out into empty air, carry something away with them. Not a story to frighten, but a quiet wonder. A reminder that perception is not always deception, and that sometimes, in the right kind of silence, the world speaks and not to confuse, but to console. And as the next bank of fog rolls in, swift and sure, the trail waits once more, and not for answers, but for listeners. Deep in the sprawling, sun-drenched maze of the Everglades. Beyond the marked airboat trails and the established hiking paths, there exists a route known only as the Last Current Way. This trail appears on no official maps. It is not a blazed path or a cleared channel. It is a suggestion, a subtle alignment of sawgrass parting slightly. A series of slightly firmer hummocks leading in a deceptively straight line. Away from the known world. It does not reveal itself to those who seek it. It appears only to those who are already lost. A sudden, quiet offer. In a sea of green monotony. Discovery is not a moment of triumph, but of shift. Those who find it feel compelled to follow. It is not a mystical pull whispered in the ear, but a profound, internal realignment of logic. The difficult, confusing route behind you suddenly feels pointless. The clear, inviting path ahead feels like the only rational choice. Your own thoughts seem to champion the decision. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. Overriding any survival training or innate caution. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. Overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. Overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. Overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. This is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You have found the way out. Of course you should follow it. This compulsion is described as calm and absolute, overriding any survival training or innate caution. You simply turn, and you begin to walk the last current way. The path is eerily accommodating. The ground is firm where you need to step. Overhanging branches seem to lift. The oppressive, buzzing insects fade away, replaced by a heavy, watchful silence. Time becomes difficult to track. The sun seems to hang in the same position in the sky. You walk, and walk, with a sense of purpose but no memory of the purpose itself. The landscape changes subtly, the familiar cypress and sawgrass giving way to stranger, older trees with pale bark. And water so clear and still it looks like black glass. The most consistent feature of all accounts is the aftermath. Few remember how they got back. Individuals have been found wandering along remote levees or shell roads, dehydrated and confused, with no memory of the past several hours or days. They recall finding the path, following it with relief, and a gap. A blank space in the mind. They come to awareness stumbling back into the familiar world, often miles from where they vanished, with no recollection of turning around or traversing the distance. Their gear is intact, their bodies unharmed, but a portion of their time is simply gone, erased as cleanly as a footprint in rising water. This has led to the darkest and most persistent piece of lore among Glades guides and the Seminole elders. Some say the Everglades does not release everyone. The thought is not that the swamp kills them. It is that it keeps them. Those who return are the ones deemed unnecessary, or perhaps unready, their memories wiped as a courtesy. But those who are not seen again, they are not necessarily lost. They are the ones the Glades found a use for. The ones who fit into some unseen niche in its vast, wet machinery. Their compulsion to follow was answered with a different destination. A final turn onto a current from which there is no return to our world. A search and rescue volunteer, Samuels, once disappeared for 3 days while tracking a missing tourist. He was found sitting on a log, staring at the sunset. He remembered nothing after that. But months later, during a routine medical check, an X-ray revealed an anomaly. Nestled near his spine were 3 tiny, perfect shells of a species not found in Florida, or anywhere in the modern fossil record. He has no memory of how they got there. Scientists attribute the phenomenon to extreme dehydration and heatstroke, which can cause both powerful hallucinations and significant memory loss. The last current way is a mirage of the desperate mind, a final neurological rallying point before system failure. The compelling feeling is the brain's last coherent command to seek order. The memory loss is a standard effect of physical trauma. This covers the facts, but not the eerie consistency of the experience, or the unsettling peace that accompanies the compulsion. To speak of the last current way is to acknowledge the Everglades not just as an ecosystem, but as a consciousness. The trail is its invitation. The compulsion is its voice. The memory loss is its seal. Those who walk it are not hiking. They are auditioning. And the Glades, in its slow, green, patient way, chooses who walks back out, and who stays to become part of the silence. Part of the current, another thread woven into the endless, wet tapestry of a place that maps itself not on paper, but in the lost moments of those who dare to step off its edge. Thank you for walking with me through the haunted Everglades backwater trails of Florida. These paths may look calm, but calm in the Everglades is never empty. The swamp listens. The water remembers. And the land reshapes itself around those who wander too far. If you ever find yourself deep in the Everglades after dark, trust your instincts. If the sounds stop, do not move. If lights appear where no trail exists, do not follow them. And if the swamp feels like it is closing in, turn back immediately. Rest well tonight, my friend. And may the backwater trails never learn your footsteps.